Gayle. Happy birthday. Haha, I got you. I acted like I didn't know what was 79 or 80, but I know. I already knew this a month ago. Have a good time. Enjoy.
Happy birthday, Gayle. Many more to you. And try to get something done this time when you're over 80. You should start working a little harder. Remember that. I said that now.
Yeah, you take care of them bed sores.
Like many others, one of my fond memories of Gayle is being blessed by his talent for giving a toast, a prayer, or a little speech at an important family milestone event, mostly because those are the moments when we get to learn so much about our fellow family members. A prime example is when he gave a little speech at our wedding reception, which is when I found out that my new bride had almost drowned by sticking her head in a toilet bowl as a toddler.
My favorite memories of Grandpa have always been when he always has a speech or a prayer or some thoughtful words to say at every gathering, every party. I remember specifically Parker's graduation party. He always has something very thoughtful and meaningful to say, and it's something that sticks with you for a while. Love you, Grandpa. Happy birthday.
One of my favorite memories with Grandpa is going to help him sell books at certain fairs and like downtown days sort of things, and being his little helper. Another one of my favorite memories with Grandpa is when he would take me and Annie to the pool all the time, to Shelly's pool, and then just to the neighborhood pool before Shelly had a pool. That was one of my favorite memories because we would always walk there or go or drive to the pool, and he would like sunbathe and roast himself.
Hi, Gayle. From your two favorite brother-in-laws, Steve and Roger, we want to wish you a very happy 80th. Hi, Gayle. The scene, Fridley, Minnesota, 1969. You, me, and a very young Michelle are riding in your 1969 red Chevy Impala. Michelle gets antsy or cranky and starts crying, and you pick her up and hold her in front of you, set her legs through each side of the steering wheel, and she becomes a very happy camper until we make that first right turn.
Hey, old guy, wishing you a happy 80th. Hope you enjoy your birthday as much as the rest of the people will. Take care, Gayle.
Dad, this is a message from your buddy Dick Clark. Hi there. Just wanted to tell you a few fun things about your dad. First thing, he and I became good friends during our time at ESB plant in Warsaw. Your dad and I played lots of golf together. You tell him too bad I always beat him. LOL. He will scream about that one. The truth is, I couldn't beat his old hide. He wouldn't even let me keep score, or I would have always won. Now ask him about the little snowstorm we had and he couldn't get to work, LOL, but his lab assistant made it and she lived further away than he did. We had a great time with him over that. Your dad was a great friend to me and my family. He was always taller than me, but you tell him I was prettier than he was, LOL. He always led me astray. Bad Gayle, innocent Richie. Woot! Tell your dad if he doesn't behave, I'm going to write a book about him. I hope this adds to his birthday. And tell your mom we said hello.
I can remember this when we lived in Blue Mills. I was awakened in the middle of the night with somebody talking, and come to find out, Gayle was talking in his sleep, and I could not understand what he was saying, so I let him continue, and finally realized what he was saying. He was going, ghosty, ghosty, here ghosty, 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 ghosty. And so I touched his arm, and he jumped up and screamed like an old woman. I hope you remember that. The one time Gail got up to help feed Shelley when she was brought home from the hospital was at that time we would put water in a pan and heat it up in a glass bottle. And when I got up, our trailer was full of smoke because he had fallen asleep. And everything was burned. Okay, the follow-up act of that one was one day I was coming home from work and he was going to have hot dogs cooked for our dinner. Well, I got up to the top of the steps and there was smoke billowing from our door, from the apartment. He had fallen asleep watching Shelley and he had burned our hot dogs up.
So one memory I have of Gayle is actually a story he told me about when he was staining his deck. He was staining it a pretty dark red color. Might even have just been painting the deck, I don't know. But he gets about halfway through and he's kind of looking around at it and he tells me, gosh, I didn't like how this was looking. It kind of looks like crap. And he was getting a little frustrated with it, and Diane comes out from the house and looks at it and says, boy, I don't like this at all. This doesn't look good. And Gayle said he just looked at her and said, well, I like it. And that was, I just think of that every time I see that deck outside there. This is hilarious. I wish I could have actually seen it, but he told me about it, and I always remember that story.
I remember one time after Thanksgiving dinner, we got together and played Texas Hold'em, and we were making some margaritas, and Gayle was having a good old time. He'd always say, daughter, bring me another drink. So we obliged. I don't think Gayle knew how strong the drinks were. And at the end of the evening, we had offered him a ride home or even a chance to stay at our house, but he said he was fine. And he ended up getting up and stumbled quite a bit. And just like that, he says, I'll take that ride. Love you, Gayle. Happy birthday.
First, I'd like to say that Gayle and Diane were the best neighbors that we ever had. And when they moved, we really missed them. But I want to tell a story about a time that Gayle and I were going to each drive our own truck and go down to Pleasant Hill and get some what they called slab wood, where when they cut the bark off, they cut a little bit of the wood and then they put it in a stack, and you can come down and load your truck up and pay for the wood by the load. So anyway, we got down there and we loaded Gayle's truck, and right when we got done, Gayle's back went out. And I knew that he'd always had a problem with his back going out. So I went ahead and loaded my truck. And he said, he's laying on the ground. And he said, would you go home and get Diane and bring her back down here so she can drive me home? And I said, yeah, okay. Then at that time, we didn't have cell phones. So I drove home and got Diane. And we're on the way back, and we're going through Blue Springs. And I just happened to look over, and there goes Gayle driving his truck headed home. So anyway, it wasn't that funny at the time, but it was funny later. So anyway, yeah, happy birthday, Gayle, and we love you.
One of my memories with Grandpa is basically just using the basement as a play area where we would play golf, and I would write stories on his computer. And one of the stories I wrote about Grandma and Grandpa and how much I loved them is still on their fridge. And he would spin me in his chair, and it just that was one of my favorite parts of going over there. Another one of my memories with Grandpa is when I was really little, and I don't know how I still remember this. I had to be 3 or 4, maybe even younger. He asked me who his best friend was, him or Grandma, and I said Grandpa, and he still calls me his best friend to this day, and I love both of you equally.
This is Lee, and I'd like to share some thoughts for my brother Gayle's 80th birthday. The first one really isn't a memory. It's my mother's memory. She was telling me that the night I was born, my dad came home to wake the kids up to tell them about my birth. And Gayle, in all of his wisdom, said, "Mom, we've got a baby girl." Like she was at home as opposed to in the hospital. My second thought is my mom telling me that when we would go in Morris down to the bus, the year that Gayle was still at home, he would hang on to me with his hand, and my feet would be going like crazy, but he'd be just running down the driveway because, of course, we couldn't be early, going to these things. But many happy returns, Gayle. Happy 80th birthday. You're a loving, caring, gentle brother and a good family person. Speaking of which, P.S., on Diane's 80th birthday, I want one of these done because it would be the M&M situation at the bubble outside of Wells that I want to relate the story for. Thank you, and again, happy birthday.
Hey Grandpa, happy birthday. So wish I could be there with you guys to celebrate. Just know that I'm there in spirit. But no, I was just thinking, with your birthday, really thinking about the big times in my life that you've always been there, just through elementary school to middle school, college, and now into my mid-20s here. I just can always think back and say how proud I am to be your granddaughter. You've always been there for me through sports, through my graduation, every big milestone that I've had thus far, you've been a part of, and I can't thank you enough for always being there and showing up. Just thinking back to some of my sports days, my fondest memory, probably just, anytime it had to do with softball or track, I would hear your voice, your big loud voice, and I'd be like, yep, that's my grandpa. I know he's here. I don't even have to look. I know he's there. Favorite one, was with track. You definitely thought I was Raymond Taylor running around the track, completely different person. I was like, Grandpa, that is not me. We have to look at this video back and see who's actually running this. No, but I just, I laugh at those moments, even from taking me to get my driver's license at the age of 16 when I could finally drive. Definitely almost failed my test that day, but luckily I didn't. Now the greatest driver there ever was. So, just kidding. But I really want to just say happy birthday. Love you so, so much. I cannot wait to see you guys again and everyone when I come back home. But happy birthday, and I'll see you soon.
I remember this one summer when we took a family vacation down to Table Rock Lake, and we had rented a pontoon boat and enjoyed jumping off of it. This one time we were all in the lake with our life jackets on, and we had encouraged Gayle to come join us, so he proceeds to get a life jacket on and makes a spectacular splash. But a couple minutes later, he feels this sensation against his thigh, and it turned out to be his iPhone. He forgot to take the stupid thing out of his pocket. Anyhow, I guess the only good thing that came from it is he was able to get a new iPhone.
Hey, Daddy. So one of my favorite memories from when I was really little has to be when you would come home from work. I can't remember if this was something I did every day you came home from work, or maybe just when you came home from business trips away. I can't remember, but I remember doing a lot. You would come in the front door inside our house there in Independence, and I would run from the kitchen, catapult from the top of the steps, and jump and leap into your arms. I always knew you'd catch me. Story time as a kid was the best with my dad. He would always read me bedtime stories, but it wouldn't just be reading the words on the page of whatever book I gave him. He would always invert the words of the sentences, and so to make it his own unique style, Cinderella became Rendercella, and Jack and the Beanstalk became Back in the Jeanstalk. And I just love the memory I have of him reading me those Whackbird's Terry Fails as I remember them. It was the best. All right, so we moved to South Carolina in 1989, and when we went to celebrate Christmas holiday at Grandma Lunning's house, I remember Dad and I did a skit to show them how we had assimilated to the Southern culture down there, only after a year or so of being there. And so this is the skit that we did, I remember. Them are ducks. Them are not. OSAR. See 'em wings. LIB. Them are ducks. When I was a teacher, it was just awful. I hated it. It was so much work and so little sleep, so little pay, so much stress, and it was just a terrible time. And didn't like anything about it at all, except for one thing that made it okay, and that was the fact that I got to go to work and see my dad for at least 2 of those years, I know. And he was in the same building with me, and he would always get there before I would, which was like a little bit before 7 in the morning. So I'd walk in, go down the stairs, walking down the hallway, I'd turn the corner to get to my classroom, and there would be my dad waiting for me with arms wide open, ready to give me a hug. It was a wonderful way to start my day, even though I knew the day was going to be crappy. At least it started off good. Thank you for that, Dad. Okay, so this happened, I was probably 19 or 20 at the time. I know I was a sophomore in college because I had been on my own doing the college thing for about a year at that point. Mom and Dad were living in Missouri, and I was still back in South Carolina finishing up school. Over the winter break, they had decided to come down and visit me, and they ended up taking me to Myrtle Beach, which was awesome. Loved to go there. While we were at the hotel, I met some young people down in the pool area, and they had invited me to go hang out with them. And I was like, yeah, awesome. Nothing weird about hanging out with strangers. Let's do it. Let's go have fun. And we did. I ended up going to a club with these people, and I was having a great time, enjoying myself. And then all of a sudden, I look over, and I see my dad in his pajamas at the club, and he said, "It's time to go home." I was mortified. It was so awful. But it wasn't a good memory at the time, but now it is, because as a parent, I completely understand. All you want to do as a parent is make sure that your child is safe and protected, and that's what he was doing. And even though it was mortifying at the time, I look back on it now, and it lets me know how much he loves me.
I remember when you were working in Kansas City before we moved from Hamilton, that I was coming down the street and saw that your car was, or truck, whatever it was home. And I hurried up to try to get there faster and noticed you were mowing the yard. And as I got closer, it really kind of freaked me out because the guy who I thought was my dad had an afro. Anyways, it scared me. Do you remember the time that we went to Worlds of Fun and we parked way back in the very back, and we were waiting on a tram to come to take us into the park, and you were carrying Allison, I think, on your shoulders, and you started to run to catch the tram, and you were going so fast, and then you tripped and slid in the gravel, but I think you held Allison up above your head or something, but she came out of it with no bumps, bruises, was just perfectly fine, but it scared the crap out of everybody else. I remember visiting in South Carolina. Stephen and I came out to visit, and Mom and Allison and Shelley and I went shopping, and when we came home, from shopping. We could see smoke coming up around somewhere near the house and realized that, yes, it was coming from actually the yard. And you had Stephen outside trying to stomp on the flames to control them with you as you were batting them down with a rake or something. The neighbors were out across the street watching it, and the flames were getting closer and closer to your neighbor's yard and almost getting a little baby tree. Anyway, that was a fun memory. I remember visiting in South Carolina. Stephen and I came out to visit, and Mom and Allison and Shelley and I went shopping, and when we came home from shopping, we could see smoke coming up around somewhere near the house and realized that, yes, it was coming from actually the yard. And you had Stephen outside trying to stomp on the flames to control them with you as you were batting them down with a rake or something. The neighbors were out across the street watching it, and the flames were getting closer and closer to your neighbor's yard and almost getting a little baby tree. Anyway, that was a fun memory. One of my earliest memories is of us being on the golf course. I don't think that you were playing, but we were watching somebody, and there was a group of people around us too watching. And I reached up to hold your hand with my left hand and stood there for a little bit. And I remember looking up and realizing it wasn't you. And I wanted to cry, but then I looked to my right, and there you were, just watching me hold somebody else's hand. I was very relieved to know that you were right there. Another great memory I have with you, Dad, was driving from Kansas City to South Carolina when you guys were moving back from South Carolina. I think that it was on Thanksgiving Day that you and I drove, and I remember listening to Enya all the way. Okay, well, not all the way, because there was the Chiefs game was on, and I swear they were playing on Thanksgiving and playing against the Cowboys. Just for some reason, that memory is stuck in my head, that little detail. But I enjoyed my time in the car with you.
Another memory I had was when we went to the stock car races with Dick Kaufman. We would ride in his super safe truck bed all the way to Basco. And one time we got to be in the crew pit, and some of the fellas didn't take too kindly about having your boys in the pit. And they promptly told you, get your boys out of here. And you said, them ain't my boys, them my girls. So I had to stop and think, why? I know I was skinny, I know I was scraggly, but why would they think that we were boys? Pictorial proof. Cute kindergartner. Beau's dress. Fast forward. 2nd grade. He called me red. Pissed me off. I wanted to bite him, so I wasn't going to give him a smile. 3rd grade boy. 5th grade boy. Too bad I don't have pics of Steph because she looked just as cool. Dad, I think one of the greatest gifts you've given every member of this family is your gift of thoughtful, from the heart words in the form of special poems. Every time you write one, I cry. It's something I have cherished and I have kept. One of my favorites happened to be at my wedding. I am your girl, and I am a daddy's girl. Okay, it's 1st grade. We're in Cleveland, Ohio, in our apartment, and you decided we're going to play something different. We're going to have word of the day. You made me learn a new word each day. So I'm wondering if that is where I got my BS, MS, and my PhD, or as you lovingly call it, my bullshit, my more shit, and my piled higher and deeper shit. The scene is the kitchen in Sumter, South Carolina. Mom and I enjoying a nice, pleasant conversation, And all of a sudden, to our wondering eyes appears a 6'4" man, quickly running through the house, getting naked, running as a jaybird. Fire ants. Need I say more? Okay, I think my fear of bridges kind of comes from Keokuk Bridge. But there was one time we were coming over the bridge, heading back from Keokuk to Hamilton, and it started to rain. And so we didn't have AC in our car. And so the windows were wide open. And you decided to go ahead and roll the window up. And the damn thing wouldn't roll up. And you're like, what is going on? And lo and behold, Steph's head was in the window. You couldn't roll it up because you were rolling your kid's head in the window. Okay, and another Hamilton story. I think we were headed home from Warsaw after maybe a night at the Masons or Nasons, Bernie Nason, and it was dark and going down this road. And Steph and I are idiots because you're saying, here, pull my finger. And we were making the lights go from regular to bright. Pull my finger. No, I want to pull your finger. No, it's my turn. You know, I had a short stint at playing softball, but you know, this skinny, scrawny girl, she wanted to be the pitcher. And so my dad sat out with me, catching my crazy sidearm pitches and working with me and helping me make it. And finally, guess who gave me a chance? I finally got a chance, and I think that was either at Palmyra or wherever. But I closed out the show, and what I remember is my dad yelling, "Attaboy, girl. Attaboy, girl."
Well, here's a good one. When I was in labor with Shelley, it had been an all day laying around in the bed and just sitting there talking. And most of the time, Gayle was down in the father's room talking to the other fathers. And so one time he comes back, and I'm really in a lot of pain. And he has the audacity to ask me if I want to come down and watch football. This is when Gayle was working at a battery factory in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we lived on Lucia Lane. Shelley was just a baby at that time, and I was working at a bank. And it just so happened that it was a Friday evening, and Gayle called to say that he was going to go with his friends and have some drinks, and that he would be home shortly. Well, come 8 o'clock, he wasn't home. Midnight, he wasn't home. 2 o'clock in the morning, he wasn't home. 5 o'clock, I hear somebody knocking on the door. So I go to the door, and there's this little beady-eyed man, kind of tipsy, and Gayle's standing there, and I go, "Where have you been?" And he goes, "I've been at June's house." And so I asked, "Well, who's June?" And he walked by me, went to bed, and I found out later that June and her husband, who Gayle worked with her husband, have a party at their house every Friday night, and it wasn't long before I was going there also. When we first got married, Gayle was 23 and I was 19, and so needless to say, there was a little adjustment learning how to live together. And it seemed like Gayle, every time, whenever, which was not a lot, but he would get in his car and take off and go for a drive. Well, the last time he did that, I hopped in the car with him. We went around the block and came back home.
My fondest memory of Gayle was when we went miniature golfing one time in Minneapolis with Grandpa Harold and Grandma Alice. And I ended up with the highest score. I thought I won. Gayle was gracious enough to say, "Congratulations, Nana. Good job." Happy birthday, Gayle.
Happy birthday, Gayle.
Love you.
Hi, Gayle. First of all, happy 80th birthday. That's so awesome. One memory that I have that sticks out to me the most is when you were my basketball coach. I hated basketball, but I really had fun with Allison and with you coaching us. You were always awesome. But mostly what I remember is just that you were such an awesome neighbor and friend and second dad to me more than anything. I always knew that you were always going to be there for me, and not a lot of people are blessed to have that. So I definitely think that you made a huge impact on my life growing up just by being there and being so kind. And then you were so kind to my kiddo when you were subbing. So we just really appreciate you. And again, happy birthday.
Another memory I have of Gayle is just kind of all the times we played golf together. We played probably 100 rounds over the years. It was always fun, always a good time playing with Gayle. He enjoyed the game and enjoyed being outside. And we played in the Teetering Rocks Golf League there for 5 or 6 years, and it was always fun. It was a good time. Gayle's a good golf partner, and it's always fun.
I remember this one time when Gayle got his new laptop. He had difficulty logging into his computer, and he was calling me up. We were trying to figure it out, so I finally went over, and turned out the reason he couldn't get in was because he had the stupid num lock button on. So he was obviously happy that he was able to get in, but that was after a few moogly booglies and a couple of cuss words.
Some of my favorite memories with Grandpa, going golfing in South Carolina and having Grandma come behind us on the golf cart because she works in the clubhouse, and picking up all the clubs I left behind as I went out on the golf course. Also in South Carolina, going and feeding the ducks. We'd take a big loaf of bread and go feed the ducks and throw them in the water and have them all swarm around you. And then we used to go to boat and RV shows at Bartle Hall a lot. We'd walk around and climb in and out of all the boats and the RVs and check out all the cool things they had. We always had a good time walking around and seeing all the stuff there.
My favorite memories of Grandpa are that he always is an attention grabber. He either makes a speech or he throws out a big box of snowballs, or he's always a main event. And he's just super kind and really thoughtful. He has a better insight on things. Those are my favorite memories of Grandpa. Anyway, I love you.
Another one of my memories is going to Paradise Park all the time, and we would always go mini golfing. And one time when we went with Emma, we went to Dairy Queen afterwards, and I put sugar in my Coke.
Another one of my favorite memories with Grandpa is when me and Annie used to go to Perkins with Grandma and Grandpa like every Tuesday for a while. Yeah.
Hey Grandpa, happy birthday. I'm sorry I can't be there with you guys. I really wish I was there to celebrate with you and be there on your special day. But I did want to put this video together to tell you a couple of things that have always stood out to me and why I love you so much, and a couple of my favorite memories. One time that comes to mind always is when we got together when I was in 6th grade and we put together a biography of your life. It was such a rewarding experience, and I loved getting to know you more and hear about all the life events that you had encountered and get to know you more and what really makes Gayle Lunning the man he is today. I think a couple things that really stand out is your appreciation for others and your love for your family members and your willingness to go above and beyond for those in your life. And I think that reflects into some of my favorite memories with you in the early years. And if I know Lexi, I think she'll probably say the same thing, but she and I both really appreciate how much you came to our sporting events, academic events, and other life events that have gone on. And, you know, it was really quite a special treat being able to look into the audience and see the tallest guy in the crowd who's got the boomingest voice out there cheering you on. And it was such a source of motivation and really built up your confidence to keep moving forward. On top of that, one of my other favorite memories was during Christmas time, how you would put together these games for trivia or quizzes. And, you know, at the time I wasn't participating in it because it was more for the adults, but I can't tell you how neat it is and how much I love you for the fact that you have so many broad interests and know so much about so many different things. And I think it has kind of shaped my outlook into the world and wanting to go explore things and, you know, just live life to the fullest. And so those are just a couple of things that stand out to me. I think it's difficult to probably put it into one small video, but I just want to say I love you very much and I wish you happy birthday.
A funny memory I have of Gayle, and every time I go to a 54th Street, I think of this story. But Gayle, Diane, Allison, and I and our girls were going out to eat one night, and we were going to 54th Street. And so it's real busy when we get there, and Gayle just says, well, I'll drop you off here at the door, and I'll go find a spot. And so he did that. We went inside. We weren't expecting to see him for a minute because we thought he was going to have to park, you know, a couple businesses down in one of the neighboring businesses' lots and walk all the way up to the door. But no, he was about 30 seconds behind us. And he says, "Oh, I just found a spot right out front here. It was right there." It's like, "Oh, great. Okay." So we wait for our table a little bit and we get sat down, and then finally the manager comes up to the table and just looks at Gayle and says, "Sir, I have to ask you to move your car, please. It is you're parked in our to-go lane." And so they have this lane on the side of their building that's designated for picking up to-go orders and stuff. And Gayle parked the van right there in the to-go lane and just was jamming up the 54th Street takeout service for about 15 minutes there. So I always think of that. It was funny. Love you, Gayle.
I remember this one time I was helping Gayle finish his basement, and he was needing some more sheets of drywall. So I had cautioned him that it was about to rain, but he wanted to go anyhow. So we went to the hardware store, loaded it up, and as we're driving home, it started sprinkling, and by the time we were in his driveway, it was a complete downpour, and it wasn't a pretty sight. Reminds me of an old Chinese proverb: "Don't ever transport drywall during monsoon season."
So I went to an all-girls school, as you guys know, Columbia College, and there was an annual tradition there where we all got to welcome our dads for the weekend. It was called Dad's Weekend, I think, how original. But being an all-girls school, there were a lot of daddy's girls there, and I was one of them. And so I was super, super excited when my dad was able to come and celebrate Dad's Weekend with me because he was living out of state at that time. And I just remember having a really good time at the banquet dinner and dancing with him. And I'm just so proud that he was my dad. And we also, at that weekend, my school was hosting events for the Special Olympics. And so I had signed up my dad and I to help volunteer, run the events. And do you remember Rupert, Dad? That was so much fun, getting to help those kids. And I also remember at one point during the Special Olympics events, they were playing music because it was an outside event. And at one point, the song by the Fugees came on, "Killing Me Softly." And at that time, I think it was 1996 or 7, It was a really big popular song, and I had no idea at that time that it was a remake of a Roberta Flack song. I do know that now, but at the time I didn't know. I thought it was just, you know, a really cool contemporary song. And so when that song came on, my dad started singing along the words, and my friends were like, "Your dad knows this song? He's cool." I'm like, "Yep, I know he's cool." When I was in the 8th grade, I had to do a science project on electrolytes. And at that time, of course, we didn't have the internet back when I was in the 8th grade. So when you had to do a report or do any kind of research, it involved encyclopedias or the library. Well, we had this old encyclopedia set, Collier's Encyclopedia. I think they still have it in their basement. But I was looking up information on electrolytes, and so Dad ended up coming in and saying, "Hey, what you doing?" "Oh, I have to do this report on electrolytes," I say. And he goes, "Do you now?" And he proceeded to tell me every single detail that I needed to know for writing an amazing report on electrolytes. I mean, everything I needed to know. It was like a 2 or 3 page paper, and he helped me figure out everything I needed to know to get a really good grade. And always, throughout my whole life, I've always known that if I ever had a question that I needed an answer to, I would go to my dad, and I betcha he would know. Growing up in church with my mom and dad, it was a very common thing to see my dad go up to the pulpit and do the scripture readings for the day. And so this one time, when we were at church in South Carolina, he went up to do the scripture readings, and you know, he always had everybody's attention because of his loud booming voice. And he finished, and it was great, like he always, you know, does a great job. And when he finished reading, he came back to sit with Mom and I, who were waiting patiently in the pew for him to come join us. Well, when he walks back, he, I guess, isn't paying attention, because he walks back and then walks into the pew right in front of us and stands next to another lady and her family. And I swear it must have been like 5-10 seconds that Mom and I were standing behind him laughing before he finally looked over and realized he wasn't with his family. And just the look on his face when he looked over and just jumped and realized he wasn't standing next to his family. It was so funny. But, oh, we love you, Dad. We all know what a joker Daddy is, and when I was younger, I remember 2 times in particular where I fell victim to one of his funny jokes. One time was when we had a crack in our windshield, and it was a pretty decent sized crack, definitely noticeable, and so I didn't know that Dad had taken the car into the shop to get the windshield replaced, which is what you do, how to fix a windshield crack. So when he came home and I made a comment, "Oh, the crack is gone," he said, "Yeah, we found this gel, and you just like rub this gel on the crack and it makes the glass suck together, and I'm really happy with how it turned out." And I remember touching the windshield being like, "Oh my God, you can't even tell there was a crack there. That's amazing." Yep, totally fell for that one. Another time was when we were driving to Myrtle Beach, and we drove by the Bob Bible Ford dealership, and I made a comment like, "Oh, how weird would that be if your last name was Bible? That would be funny." And he didn't miss a beat before he said, "Actually, it's pronounced Bob Bible." And I was like, "Oh, spelled the same way. That's weird." A laughter again. So I don't know if it was me being naive or dumb or whatever, but I just always trust my dad to be honest and true with me, and from then on, I was a little more reserved. So one time we went to Starlight Theater with the whole family. I know I was there, Shelly, Steph, Mom, and Dad, of course. And I remember we were waiting for the show to start in the back lobby by the concession stands, I believe. And so we were having maybe a drink before the show started. We were sitting down on one of the benches, and all of a sudden, poor Dad gets pooped on by a bird flying overhead. And I think he was like sitting right next to one of us. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it hit like his shoulder area. And boy, we had a funny laugh about that. And one of the funniest things we ever saw, until a few minutes later, literally a few minutes later, he gets pooped on again, right on his head. Not once, but twice. Got shit on by a bird at Starlight Theater. So Ainsley and I have lived in 3 houses in the 20 years we've been together, and as all homeowners know, there's always projects that need to be done around the house. And I've always found it a very special thing that whenever Ainsley needed help with something around the house, he didn't hesitate and would always call Dad immediately, because he knew that Dad would either know how to do it or be able to help figure out how to do it. And I know it's special to Ainsley that he was able to have those times to bond with you, Dad, but it's special to me too to see you so close to my husband. And I just wanted to thank you for being such an influence on his life as well as mine. I love you.
Another JC's memory was when you guys put on a concert at the park over by the tennis courts in Hamilton. And there was a country singer who had her 8x10 headshots all signed, autographed. And of course we all got those, and we got to meet her in person because you were, I don't know, the head of the JCs or just in the JCs, but I felt really impressed that my dad was able to do that. Okay, here's a funny one. I remember walking in the mall in Keokuk, and something had caught your eye, Dad, and made you turn around to see, and you didn't get turned back around quite in time to miss walking straight into a wall or a door, whatever it was. And Mom and Shelley and I just kind of watched it all happen and let you walk right into it. Sorry. It was funny. You just had to be there. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I almost forgot this one. Remember when we went to the 7th game of the World Series in 85? Yeah. And then you're afterwards trying to find the Buick, except we didn't drive the Buick. It was the little blue truck, and you were hollering out, "Here, Buick, here, Buick." Thank you for taking me to the World Series, the final game in which we won. It was amazing. Sorry, Shelley, you didn't get to go. One summer in Hamilton, you were umpiring baseball games, and we would just hang out there at the park watching the games, even though I don't know that we knew anybody there. But Mom and Shelley and I had gone to have lunch at a cafe in town while you were umpiring. And I remember having to come back really quick and race up to find you to tell you that Mom had to go to the hospital because she was in labor with Oopie. That was exciting. Do you remember that time when you got us to eat Rocky Mountain oysters? Okay, I have another Halloween memory. Do you remember Shelley and I coming home from trick-or-treating, and Shelley's bag was stolen, and we think that it was Dee Delaney that stole it? I think Mom had to grab you and stop you from running next door to wring his little neck.
Hey, I just wanted to add on to Steph's that this knocked over display business, you mentioned not sure what he was looking at. Well, I remember. It was February in Keokuk, Iowa, and we got to go over and go to JCPenney's every once in a while. And it just so happened to be a rather kind of mid-warm day, but there's no reason this lady should have been wearing what she was wearing. She was wearing short shorts or a short skirt, and of course, Dad had his eye on her and missed everything and knocked down the entire display. Hey Steph, just to add on to the Dad umpiring the game and having Allison on her way, the other thing I remember about Dad umping games was how he handled all the hecklers. And there was one time he had someone who was just yelling at him calling him a dumb redneck. Dad kindly takes his face mask off and turns around and says, yeah, sure, I do have a little bit of a sunburn on my red neck. Okay, so, you know, we were not allowed to swear as kids, but we had our quick little workaround when, I don't know who said it, but somebody said, damn it, and we got in such big trouble. And so, because we lived right across from Lock and Dam 19, Steph and I thought we were fooling you and saying, damn, damn, Keokuk Dam, damn, damn, Keokuk Dam. Everyone knows my dad's love for KU basketball and the history of basketball in general. And the mecca of basketball happens to be Allen Fieldhouse. Dad had never been, and somehow I was able to get some tickets right after Mario's Miracle. And so we went to the game and they showed this hype video and how we won the whole championship. And we're in the moment. It is passionate and overwhelming. And I look over at my dad and he is crying. I felt so honored to give that gift to him. Okay, again about KU. I had just become a realtor and I was starting to make some money, and one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to treat my family to a fun game. And so I found tickets to the Oklahoma-Kansas Big 12 playoff game or something at Arrowhead. And mind you, this was a lot of money for me. I was just starting out. And so I took Rob, Dad, and Kyle to this game. It was 19 degrees outside. It was freaking cold. And so we're all huddled underneath our blankets and we're enjoying the game until these people behind us decide to bless us with their presence. It was 4 drunk ass girls. Sorry for the bad word, but they were loaded. And so all of a sudden we hear, huh, huh, whoa, it went all over the back of Kyle's head. Now he was under the blankets and nothing hit him. And Rob is pissed. Dad's sitting there nice, like a nice gentleman. And Rob was about ready to throttle this lady. And again, our blankets are now ruined. So it's 19 degrees, we're freezing. But I had to laugh because I looked 2 rows down. 2 rows down. The people in front of us had white crap in their hair. And it looked like maggots. They must have had rice for dinner, but they had shit in their hair that looked like maggots. So thanks for spending that memory with me. Okay, basketball again. To this day, I think Rob has not forgiven me over this one, but one of the builders had Big 12 championship at Sprint Center tickets. And we were gonna be in a suite. And we were, I don't remember what the first game was. It might have been KU, but the second game was Wisconsin. Of course, you know, Rob's Wisconsin. And so you and I are drinking our beer happily all afternoon. And we go home after our day. And I didn't realize this, but Big 12 games, you're not allowed to sell beer unless you're in a suite. So we got to have beer, drinks, and ball all afternoon. Okay, this is gonna be a little bit longer one, but it's probably one of the most long-lasting and biggest gifts you've given me without you even knowing you gave it to me. Somebody said I was a nosy child, precocious child. I don't know who said that would be. Dad, I think you said I was nosy. Can't keep a secret. Well, that came to play as I secretly dug through all of your drawers. I don't know why, but I dug through your drawers and I found this manuscript called Try God. I had no idea what I was going to be reading at the time or what it meant to me or even to you guys. I know we lived through a little bit of a tough time in Texas and then on into Ohio, and seems like the rain never stopped for us. But in those tough times came a source of very, very deep faith and a real living knowledge that God is real and God is alive and he lifts us up every time we need it. So I want to share a little bit of that manuscript. This was a time when you were in between jobs and you really were down to our last few whatever dollars, cents, I don't know, it didn't matter to me then, but you had just enough money to get you to your interview that would give you gas, or it gave you food, or it allowed you to have a place to sleep and look presentable in the morning. Couldn't afford a missed exit. Any mistakes would be detrimental. Well, as Texas has gully washers, so you can't even see a foot in front of you, and this happened to be happening on you, and you knew the severity if I missed my exit. And I think it panicked you, and you finally threw your hands up and said, okay, God, I surrender, just get me there. It wasn't too long after that, this car pulls up in front of you and slowly proceeds and pulls right in your lane. And you look up at the license plate and it had 6 letters on it. TRYGOD. Try God. Must be an answer, right? Must be God carrying you. So you decide to follow him and you get off on this exit, get up on the exit, right one. You look over to your left or right, and that was a Ponderosa, Bonanza, or something back there that had the nice marquee up there, and it said, people who are 6'4" eat free today. Well, I know my dad's 6'4", so God provided for you. And I know you got the job and everything was good, but my inadvertent reading of that created this incredible picture that God lifted and carried me through many troubles and trials. And I know you didn't mean for us to read it, but I did, and I am so thankful.
As Gayle and I began our journey together, it turned out it wasn't very long before I realized that I had picked out a husband and a partner that every woman should have. Every year there were surprises. There was flowers, songs on radios, candy, dinners, gifts, always a surprise. Life was not dull with him. As a matter of fact, I think most people will agree there is no Diane without a Gayle. You became a father that every child should have. By now, with all the stories, you have left them a treasure trove of memories, and how great that is. The pride you have shown for your grandchildren will shine far beyond the time you are here on this earth, with always trying to show them a lesson or two and giving them whatever they want. So my favorite all-time memory is the time that you dedicated the song by Johnny Mathis, The 12th of Never, which still brings tears to my eyes. It will always forever remain in my heart. So the words that I want you to be reminded of is this. You asked me how long I'll love you, I'll tell you true. Until the 12th of never, I'll be loving you. So on your 80th birthday, let this be a reminder how much you are loved by everybody, and most of all by me. Happy 80th.